What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Today's project is this Poulan chainsaw, and the problem is someone took apart the saw and now I have to put it back together. Let's take a good look at it, find out what's wrong with it, and hopefully we can fix it. In this video, we try and repair this chainsaw. However, it may not be the exact repair you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. Poulan chainsaws have been around for a very long time. I know that most people would say they're junk, but I think it's better than buying a no-name brand off the internet from a faraway country. And besides, most residential saws were only meant to be used for down limbs and not for professional work. And this is the situation here. A limb came down after a storm and they needed to cut it into a manageable size. For whatever reason, the owner was trying to fix a problem and took the saw apart and didn't know how to put it back together. This problem wouldn't be too difficult, except I wasn't the one who took it apart, so figuring out where everything goes will be the interesting part. The only thing I can hope is that all the nuts and bolts are not missing and that all the parts are here as well. Here's what came in the case, so all we have to do is put it back together so it looks like a chainsaw. The part that stumped the previous owner was a rather large spring. Let me find it and show you what it looks like. So here's the spring, and on first impression, I couldn't tell you where it could possibly go. I'm not a chainsaw specialist, and when I work on them, it's usually to get them running again. I never take the whole thing apart. I'm sure there are people out there watching who could tell me exactly where the spring goes. Now, after taking a closer look at the saw, I think I have an idea what the spring is used for and where it goes. I think the spring goes in this housing, and when the housing is on the saw, it applies force on a strap that goes around the clutch drum that works the chain brake and of course interacts with the handle. I just have to figure out how all this goes together, which is going to take some trial and error, mostly lots of error, so you'll have to bear with me. So I think I've got it in the right configuration. However, I have to figure out how to apply a lot of force to compress the spring. Also, I think I need to install it with the clutch drum just to make it easier, so I'll have to remove it from the engine. So I tried it a couple of ways, and unfortunately the only thing I could come up with was to put the housing against a tree versus one of the fence posts because it won't slip against the hard plastic. Then I'll use a large flathead screwdriver to push the spring into place. I was wearing safety glasses for this part. I'm pretty sure I'm doing it wrong or in a very unsafe way, but it's what worked for me. I had to do it more than once because I got it wrong the first, the second, and the third time, so I was very tired of doing it at this point. I don't know what the spring rate is for the spring, but the last inch was very tough to compress. Now, before I reinstall the chain brake assembly, this piece of metal came off the saw, so I'll put it back into place and then install the assembly. Also, there was a small roll pin floating around the case, and I wasn't sure where it went until I tried to install the assembly and found the clutch drum brake band wasn't in the right location. The roll pin helps to brace the anchor end of the brake band, and without it, the chain brake will not work, so this is a very important piece. Once in place, check that it's seated in its opening, and then we can reinstall the assembly. After installing the chain brake assembly, we can then replace the washer and the retaining clip. Then we can replace the bar, the chain, followed by the side cover, and then the bar nuts. Now leave the bar nuts loose to help get the chain tensioner located to the bar, and once the chain is tensioned, then we can tighten the bar nuts. Now that the bar and the chain are back on the saw, we can put the handle back on. Luckily, they put the screws in their locations so they didn't get lost. Remove them and replace the handle followed by the screws. Once it's on, I'll put some fresh fuel in the tank, prime the fuel system, and then we'll try starting it. So it starts and runs just fine, which is great because it saves me the trouble of having to fix it. Just as a reminder, if you're pressing the primer bulb and it's not filling with fuel, then you might have a bad primer bulb, a crack in your fuel line, or possibly a carburetor problem. Now, I do apologize, I didn't get footage of the chain brake working as I usually don't deal with it, but at least it's back together and working. I did test it later on during a second test run and it did work fine. Now, if you're doing engine work, I would always suggest making some test cuts on some wood just to make sure it's cutting properly without the engine bogging down. Now, if your engine is bogging down and dying, then you'll need to adjust the carburetor. Another reason why this chainsaw would be in pieces requiring you to put it back together is if someone was trying to fix the engine and gave up on it. I have personally seen this a few times and I've passed on the opportunity. I usually buy complete saws, but I made an exception on this one. So my question is, would you take on someone else's project? If you thought the job was challenging before, try starting it where someone left off. If you hadn't figured it out, I wouldn't even bother with it. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time here. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I hope to see you in my next video.